And he's responsible for method and innovation development at iSquare, and he focuses a lot on implicit effects of marketing, emotions, and visual perception. So that's why, of course, we have him here today. And as he's also an expert in multivariate statistics, he is developing iSquare's media benchmarks. And today he will talk about our media attention benchmark and will show us how media consumption has changed during COVID and what this means in terms of ad performance. So I hope everyone is back, and yeah, please, Matthias, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Carolina, for the intro. And I'm happy to have you all back in the session. I will present some insights from our media attention benchmark studies that we regularly conduct. Yeah, as Carolina already mentioned, we will talk about advertising effectiveness in the next half hour. I think my talk also reflects a lot of what Hartmut Scheffler just said in the interview, that a holistic brand consulting is a very important thing, and that we have to keep the brand in mind when talking to brand managers, and that this is one of the key assets that we as market researchers have to bring to the play. So and for us to tell good stories to our clients, especially in the brand and marketing domain, we need good data about, for instance, perception. And I will show some perception data today from our media benchmarks. First of all, I thought, well, how can I start this talk? What is important about media attention today in this very situation? And as you all know, of course, obviously, all over the world, COVID-19 has changed somehow the way we consume media today. And first of all, it seems that from a media and advertising perspective, these are rather good news, because of course we all know that our media consumption basically has increased, right? You all might notice this from your own perspective. I just looked up some statistics. For instance, the amount of video gaming during lockdown times in France has increased a lot, because people say, I spent more times gaming during the lockdowns. This is just one indicator. Or take the media consumption behavior in Germany. Yeah, these are official numbers from 7-One Media, who regularly publish this media activity guide, and they've shown that in the last year we won a whole additional media hour with viewers in Germany. That is across all screens. People spend just more time in front of the screen because they are at home and have a lot of free time to spend. That's why it's also not surprising that people say that during the pandemic times and during coronavirus times, they spent more time video streaming, messaging their friends, using social media in order to stay connected and to get inspired by new brand messages and all these other domains. So at first sight, this seems that these are all positive news. And when we contrast this with business figures, we also see that the global ad spending declined last year, but it is projected to rise this year by global almost 6%. And that, of course, makes brand managers maybe very happy. They see, well, there's a bigger, the market is growing in a way. So the market size itself is growing. The global attention market gets bigger. And I wrote there, at least for some time, because I think it's not a phenomenon that will stay as such, but it will go back to normal when we have the pandemic situation behind us. But for now, we see that people have more time in front of screens. But at the other hand, we also have to keep in mind that we're living in times where we have ever more offerings. Of course, we have more media channels, constant growth of different media channels, new platforms entering the market every day, TikTok, Clubhouse, you name it. There are so many advertising platforms or potential advertising platforms that, of course, this battle for attention of the consumer gets more and more intensive. Yeah? And against the backdrop of this pandemic situation and this advertising situation, I would say let's focus on three main questions for today's talk. First of all, how much attention do ads really get from the consumers? The second one, how do social media ads in particular convert views into brand lift? And how can I, as an advertiser, optimize my creation in order to keep up with these limited timeframes and to get the most out of my limited time that I have with the consumers? In order to answer these questions, of course, we as iSquare, we have a lot of data to use for that. And we can use our benchmark data in order to answer a lot of these attention-related questions, because, of course, when we conduct a study, we often feed the study data into a big database. Our meta-analysis database, the media benchmark is fed with all the studies that run into that. And as we are now in the market for more than 20 years, of course, we have a huge number of data points to report on. And when you put all this into just one bucket, it's very interesting because you get a high number of respondents, a high number of ads and media channels, and can do at the same time very specific analysis. You can dig very deep into specifics of a media channel and so on, but you also get super stable results because these results do not depend on a specific brand or on a specific marketing message or product or target group. They're rather general. Yeah, and that's the big advantage that you have when you do a meta-analysis of benchmarking data, and that's why we are talking about these benchmarks today. And when we do a first analysis of these benchmarks, what is the average time that people spend with advertising? The first answer.
I was just talking about the in-context testing approach that we use for our media studies in order to record authentic media behavior using eye tracking technology and behavior measurement. And all this is very important for us to record authentic data by using this in-context testing approach. This is the basis of all our media exploration tests, and it's just important to know how these data come into our database. So now let's squeeze out some data out of the benchmark database. So the first thing I wanted to show you is how long is an average ad contact across all media channels when you just look up how many % of viewers look for how long at the specific advertisings. And what we see here is that we have a strong decay in the average viewing time. That means that only a very small percentage of viewers is present or does look at advertising for more than, let's say, 2 or 3 seconds. See at the 2 seconds bar is already only 53%. So that means that the average ad contact is very short. That is something most of you might know that, but it's always good to keep that in mind, how short the timeframes actually are that we have for producing effective advertising. But on the other hand, and Michael already showed this graph, it's not such a big problem because within the first 2.5 seconds, you develop a big advertising effect, or the majority of the advertising effect that we can measure, for instance, in using the recognition as one indicator of advertising effect, builds up within the first 2.5 seconds. So when you use those 2.5 seconds wisely, you can create a lot of brand lift value for your brand, even if it's only brief contact. But of course, from the creative side, you have to keep in mind that you only have a brief, a short fraction, a few seconds that the consumer will give you his or her attention. And of course, the media channels differ in their attention. You might have already anticipated this. Of course, it's not the same if you're talking about digital banner advertising, which typically has around 2 seconds, 1.8 seconds on average. Or if we use, for instance, out-of-home advertising, which is already double the rate. Yeah, we have 3.4 seconds. Or if we move on a step higher, print ads are even longer perceived, 5 seconds and more. That appears to be a long time, but if you have a look at these retailer advertisements from where you can look up groceries from the supermarkets, people spend 10 seconds or more with these advertising. So that's a fairly long time, all is beaten by the ubiquitous TV advertising, which always is a bit longer and already gives us 10 seconds of attention from the consumers. And of course, we're now living in digital times, so you might wonder how about online video, and online video is almost at the very same level as TV advertising. So that's the basic message. That online video is, for some target groups, it's equivalent to the new TV advertising and has the same time windows. Still, however, most of the TV ads are longer than 10 seconds. And so it's a question how to develop a good creative that can make a good use of those 10 seconds that you have. And of course, when we're talking about online video, you know that this field is very complex. We have a lot of different formats. There's a variety of different platforms, as I already mentioned. And that also means that the mechanics of communicating to the consumer are rather different between the platforms. If we take a look, for instance, only at newsfeed-based video ads, such as Facebook video ads or Instagram video ads, they are rather short. If we have a look at the play times here, we see that within the first 2 or 3 seconds, we see a steep decline here. And that means that after 2 seconds, only 40 to 50% of viewers still are there. Why is that? Because you have those newsfeed-based scrolling behavior. People tend to scroll very fast along their newsfeed. And if the marketing message is not relevant for them, they will quickly disappear again. So you have to keep this in mind, that you have only those few seconds with the consumer that you have to use wisely. Or these are data from a different study, not only from a media benchmark, but from a different other study that we conducted. We recently ran a study where we tested Instagram versus YouTube when it comes to their e-commerce activation effects. And we also measured how long did this ad play on Instagram or YouTube. And we used a variety of different ads, so 6 brands. We ran this in the US last year with average consumers. And we saw that Instagram has short play duration compared to YouTube. What we see here now is those 1.5 seconds versus 8 seconds. You could say, well, maybe that means that Instagram has a harder time to really communicate something to the consumer. Yeah, YouTube has almost 6 times or even more attention span from the consumer. So the effect likely will be higher for YouTube. But when we have a look at the advertising, the brand lift data, we see that this is not necessarily the case. So on YouTube, we observed in this specific study for 6 brands, virtually the same ad effectiveness scores than we did on Instagram. That means that Instagram somehow does a different job in talking to the consumer. Somehow the mechanics of the ads on Instagram are different, so that Instagram only needs those 1.5 or 2 seconds in order to create the same brand lift that YouTube does within 8 seconds. And just to give you an example, typically the ads on Instagram also look different as they do compared to YouTube ads. So I disabled the sound because it's not so necessary here, but you see this is a typical Instagram ad. It's explosive. It has visual arts. It has a high contrast, high visual dynamics. Somehow it tries to spark interest in the viewer and persuade him to stay longer with the ad message. Compared to that, we have a look at one of the pre-rolls that were in the study for Nike. This feels rather like a typical TV ad. It's not that long. It's not 30 seconds, but rather short. But it's a classical ad telling us a story with the brand not being present so intensively. And that means there are different mechanics in talking to the consumer on Instagram compared to YouTube. Let's move on to a third and last case that I wanted to present you. Let's have a look at this specific new kind of product category. These are glasses that have music players included. That's a whole new category. I personally wouldn't know how to name this. Music glasses, sunglasses with audio players, however. And of course, this is a lifestyle gadget that goes out to mainly to younger consumers. Or Bose, the manufacturer of these glasses, tries to talk to younger consumers. But of course, this is a complex product. How can a brand like Bose talk to younger consumers about this complex product using new technologies and all the latest platforms? Well, we tried out in a study to contrast TikTok versus YouTube, because we're interested how TikTok performs in this media concert. And what we used here for TikTok was a classical unboxing video of one of the famous TikTok influencers, a young lady unwrapping the glasses from the box and trying them out, having a dance party with the glasses on, and she was very excited about the sound of these glasses. In contrast, we had on YouTube a laid-back, cool video showcasing the USPs of this product. But this laid-back pre-roll video, it was a bit slow. It showed the brand appearance only very briefly at the beginning of this pre-roll, and now we compared the play durations of these videos first. What we see is that whereas we have on YouTube these 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds a steep drop out of people because they're not so very interested in this marketing message, we have much longer, much more pronounced viewing pattern here on TikTok. So more people stay until the very end. That's 27 seconds. Keep that in mind. That's a very long attention span here, but somehow this video from the influencer was so entertaining that people stayed with this marketing message. And then, of course, when you see this difference in absolute play duration times and of viewer share at the end of the video, it's no surprise that the TikTok video has been much more effective in, for instance, bringing about the brand message. The recall of the brand was much higher for the Bose ad on TikTok, this influencer post, than it was on YouTube. And also, when we take time into a perspective here and have a look at how does recall develop within the first few seconds viewed, we see that you only need 2 or 3 seconds in order to develop a decent recall rate, whereas YouTube has a much harder time to really persuade people. Well, this was a Bose ad, we have a new product, and all this. Telling this a little bit complicated story was much harder for YouTube. And of course, this is only one case example. This could be the other way around with different creatives. The only thing I wanted to show here was that it's really the creative that matters, and that these new channels, which are often have very short attention times, can also be very effective because they use a different mechanic to talk to the consumer. And with this, I want to close my short trip into the database and the media data. And maybe just as a short summary, first of all, take into account that the attention span of the consumer is really limited. You have only a few seconds of time. Take them serious. Make sure that you don't create too long advertisings that are not effective because people don't stay until the end of your marketing message. Select the channels that have the most intensive attention spans in your target group. Of course, what I've shown you on TikTok is something that is very specific to younger consumers. You would never reach older audiences, 40 and beyond, on these TikTok platforms. But when you target younger consumers, go to the platform where they are and where they spend most of their time, and create advertising that really takes into account the best practice guidelines for these channels. We've seen a lot of different cases today. You've seen that advertising on the different platforms works in a different way. We have, for instance, the high contrast, eye-catching visuals on Instagram that we just saw earlier, or the influencer on TikTok with a totally different style of communication. And also this logo presence in a pre-roll on YouTube is something very important in order to make use of your time. Yeah, and these were the insights from my talk today. I just want to end briefly. If you are interested in getting more information about this last case study that I just shown you, there's a lot more data to learn about brand image effects and so on. You're welcome to attend another webinar, Quirks. This is a US webinar. We'll be talking together with Jeff Bander, our Chief Revenue Officer, about the same case study, but more data in the background. And if you're interested, you can register by using this QR code.